Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the next section, which is talking about some different editors that you can use to rapidly work with Drupal code, and to do so in a way that's feature-rich, that gives you just the tools you need to rapidly create code, debug your code, and more. We'll go ahead and take this opportunity to look at the source code for this page that displays some information about different editors. So if you scroll up to our hook menu implementation, you'll see we have an item here called editors. So if we copy this and paste it into our browser, we'll see a page that has some information about some of the features you should look for in an editor, and then a few that I've used and that I've heard good things about, along with links and what operating systems they work with, as well as price. So back to the source code. Source code is pretty simple here. First, we have a simple array that includes a list of features you should look for. And then we go through a for each loop, grabbing each item out as the value variable. And we're adding this to a nice features output HTML output variable just by wrapping an L tag around the value. And finally, after that's compiled, we just wrap UL tags around it to make a nice list. Next, we have a decent editors list. So these are editors that I would recommend. This next chunk of code demonstrates how to use a theme function to generate a table. And I'm not going to go into this in great detail here because we haven't hit theming yet in this video series, but I just want to show you real quick what the basics of this particular function are. So we're using a function called theme_table, and the way we call that in Drupal is to use the theme function and pass it table. Now this allows other modules to jump in and change the output as well. So we want to wrap everything in the theme function instead of calling the function theme_table. And then we're passing this an array, and we're passing it an array of header items as well as an array of rows. So we step back up here to the top of this chunk, we see we have our header array, which just contains the header items link, OSX, Linux, Win, and price. And then each row item here includes a link to the editor's site, an X next to the operating systems that it works with, and the price. And all of this will get formatted, if we jump back to our page, as this table right here. Chances are that you already have an editor that you like to use. So just consider this a little information boost about other editors, and maybe the opportunity to seek out some features that you haven't exploited yet in your own editor. So I use a combination of Komodo IDE and Coda myself. You'll see all of the demonstrations in these videos are done in Komodo. And some of the things that I like about it and some of the other editors that I've used are the ability to use an integrated debugger, first thing. A debugger is really nice because it allows you to jump through function call stacks as well as identify what the value of numerous variables are at any point during code execution. A debugger offers some tools that can't be duplicated in just plain PHP. So while you can use other tools like the devel module and functions like debug backtrace in PHP to sort of emulate it, it's difficult to get the same speed and the same feature set without a real debugger. So debugger integration is really important to me. And of the ones down here that include it, Komodo IDE does, Eclipse, which is free, PHP-Ed, all of these three include debuggers. A functionless view is very important, so I'm going to jump to Komodo here, and I'm going to show you what I mean. So we're on a page that includes numerous functions, and I want to be able to jump to a function or see kind of a short version of all of the functions that exist on this file. And down here, if I click here, I can see this short list. So I can jump to a new function this way. This is nice, especially when exploring Drupal's possibilities. So if you go into the includes directory and you open up something like bootstrap.inc, This is a huge file, and it can be really difficult to work through and to see what might be useful to you. But if you click this function list, it's a manageable list. You can see here some of the functions that we used in our previous section, variable get and variable set, as well as some other ones. So this can be a useful discovery tool as well as navigating tool within files. The jump to function definition feature is a great utility for discovering code and learning how to interact with different functions. So let me go ahead and jump back to the editor here. If I hold down Control and click variable get, it will jump to the function declaration of this function. So we can look at the comments and we can look at how it actually works. And this might provide us with clues as to how to work with it or tips on how to write our own code better, because Drupal source code, of course, is well documented and well groomed. Okay, let's jump back to the page. Version control integration can be really nice with your editor. So if you can commit code and update code directly within your editor, it can save you time and make the workflow a lot quicker. So this includes working with CVS and Subversion, as well as Git in particular. So CVS is what Drupal is currently on, and they'll be moving over to Git. So that's why support of those two is nice. Subversion allows you to work alongside CVS and Git without any conflict. So having that additional version control system supported is really nice. I know Komodo IDE integrates with this. PHP-Ed has some nice tools for integrating any tools that integrate with Explorer in with the project browser in the editor itself. So if you use something like Tortoise CVS or SVN or Git, those will integrate directly into your editor. Or if you use another system for integrating with Explorer, those will be available to you within the editor itself. Eclipse also works with version control, although you may need additional plugins to support various version control systems. Coda supports version control, and from what I hear, I don't use TextMate, but TextMate has some very nice utilities for working with version control. Next, the ability to search all files within the editor can be very nice. So let me demonstrate this in Komodo. If I wanted to look for the definition of the T function to see how it works, what I could do is right-click on the project, or if I know what folder it might be in, I would right-click on that and go to Find. And now I can search for function T and a parenthesis and search Find All. And here it is, and I can double-click this to open up where it's defined. So being able to search through the entire code base for a Drupal site can be really useful to finding something specific, and the implementation in Komodo works pretty quick. If there's not a search utility in your editor, that's not a problem. You can either use your Explorer interface. For Mac it would be Finder, for Windows it would be Explorer, or you can use a command line utility called grep, which is actually very powerful but requires that you understand the basics around regular expressions. So let's go ahead and take a look at the next item. Ability to set syntax highlighting for special extensions like .module and .install. So you may have noticed initially when you open up a .module or a .info or .install file in your editor that it's not syntax coded to PHP. The reason for this is that .module and .install extensions aren't standard, but Drupal uses them to delineate between different PHP files. So you need the ability to be able to set .module and .install files to be syntactically the same as PHP. So in Komodo, for example, you would go up to Preferences and go to File Associations and add a new pattern here. So for .module it would be star.module, and anything matching that we would want to set to use PHP syntax highlighting. Okay, let's go back. Next, the ability to use two spaces for tabs. Some editors use tabs by default, But the Drupal standard, the Drupal coding standard, is to use 2 spaces. And the reason for this is that spaces are consistent between editors, whereas tabs can be short or long, and they can make some code that looks very good in one editor look very bad in another. This last item is the ability to sync with a remote site. Now, if you're using version control to push changes to a remote site, that's the ideal way. But if you're not on version control, then the ability to make a change locally and have it pushed to a remote site is actually really nice. And as far as I know, none of these editors actually support that. So this is more of a wish list item for me, something I'd like to see in the future from these editors. Okay, let's talk about these editors briefly. Komodo IDE is the one I use. It's $245, so it's not super cheap. If you want a sort of scaled down version, Komodo Edit is available for free, and it's available on all platforms as well. Komodo IDE offers debugging, whereas Komodo Edit does not, and it has a couple other features as well. Eclipse PDT is the Eclipse development platform with some PHP tools added in, and it's free, and it actually works pretty good. It's got some quirks to it, which is why I prefer Komodo, but if you're going for free and you want something that supports debugging, this is the way to go. And it has versions for OS X, Linux, and Windows. So this is a good one to explore. PHP Ed is my personal favorite for Windows. One of the things that I really like about it is that the code browser integrates with Explorer, so if you add utilities like Tigris's Tortoise SVN or Tortoise CVS, you can use those directly in the editor to manage source code and use any other Explorer integrated tools directly in the editor. So I like PHP Ed a lot. It's also got a lot of the features of Komodo, like the ability to jump to a function and a function list view. PHP Ed is also one of the few Windows IDEs that integrates with debugging, but it's not cheap. It's $299. Coda, on the other hand, is a bit cheaper. It's $99. It's not a full-fledged IDE, and it's for Mac only, but what I like about it is its ability to work with remote file directories easily. It also supports version control, and it has a built-in terminal that will allow you to log in automatically to a site remotely through SSH, for example. So I run Coda to work with the remote version of a site that I'm building locally with Komodo. TextMate I don't have a lot of experience with, but I know a lot of people in the Drupal community really like it, and it sounds like it has some really good source control utilities for working with SVN and CVS and Git.